Following on from finishing off all of the achievements on the orange box, I was reminded of Portal 2 and how close I'd come to completing all of that game's achievements back in the day. It came out in 2011 and I picked it up straight away, and I went through the game with a friend and then mopped up some other bits solo. Although, to be honest, I can barely remember playing it, but I guess it has been over a decade at this point. I was missing just 3 achievements. Professor Portal, which is unlocked by completing the carp tutorial online with a friend who has never played it before after you have completed the carp campaign yourself. The next achievement is Still Alive, which you get for completing course 4 with neither you nor your co-op partner dying. And lastly, Friends List with Benefits, which is unlocked by hugging 3 people on your friends list while playing co-op. I looked through my hard drive and couldn't see any Portal 2 data, so thought maybe the game wouldn't recognise me as having completed carp before, so I decided my best plan of attack would be to complete online with a friend, then go back for the Deathless Course 4 achievement, and finally use some other friends' accounts to do the tutorial and hugging achievements. I managed to pick up 2 copies of the game from a local second-hand store, and had a friend come round to hang and play games for the day, so I told him he couldn't leave until I had all my achievements ticked off. The game threw us in at the calibration course, which just acts as the tutorial, teaching you mechanics new to Portal 2, such as the ping system, and just generally how to think about the game a bit differently now that it's co-op, like firing portals for your partner to use in areas that their gun can't reach, and of course the classic cube returns, but sadly this time without the friendly heart decor. There's a few easy test chambers like this that we had to go through whilst the game held our hand a bit, just putting these mechanics to use, and upon the end we reached the lift to the main hub. But then this happened. My Professor Portal achievement popped. So clearly I had a cloud save for this, which I was completely unaware of, so completing the start of the game with my friend who hadn't played before ticked all those boxes. And yeah, I got the achievement when I didn't expect it. So I celebrated by giving him a hug, and knowing that I had a cloud save from previously, it was likely that I'd already hugged one person from playing back then. So therefore, just needed one more now to reach the 3 and unlock the achievement, but that could wait until later. With the Professor Portal achievement unlocking when I really didn't expect it to, it meant we didn't need to go through the entire game again, and therefore saved us both a lot of time. And with this in mind, I thought no matter how painful it got, we should avoid looking up any guides to completing course 4 without dying, and just figure that out and get that achievement ourselves, the way the game should be played really. We jumped straight in, and the first room has one player grabbing the beam for movement and the other grabbing the light barrier thing, which can be placed to block turrets. Actually, watching this back, I noticed the game tries to introduce you to blocking the turrets by giving you an area here to fire the barrier out of, but instead of doing this every time, we just ran over to the turrets and knocked them over. So that, yeah, feel a bit silly looking at that back. But either way, the rest of the test chamber was just a lot of trial and error and brain power to work out where to place the beams for movement and then how to subsequently block the turrets. There were many deaths, too many to show without this video becoming hours long. We didn't bother restarting after every death because we thought it made more sense just to work out the entire strategy and then just go in again for the Deathless run. And eventually, using the same ideas and mechanics as before, we reached this final room, and by placing the disc in the drive, exploded and finished the course. We loaded it up again to try run it all deathless, and did end up failing a few times, mostly by turrets killing us when we forgot to block them or sent ourselves in front of the wrong ones. But the funniest fail absolutely had to be this one. Currently, I just record the gameplay and record all my audio afterwards, but this moment really made me wish I had a camera and mic set up just to see and hear our reactions. But we wouldn't let this minor hiccup stop our progress. And at this point, we were getting super fast at all the rest, so went back through, and on the next attempt, reached the end, inserted the disc, blew up, and I got no achievement. I wasn't really sure what we had done wrong, so I looked up the achievement online and was pretty heartbroken to see that what we thought was Course 4 was actually only the final test chamber in Course 4, and there are 8 others previously. So the achievement requires you to complete all 9 in a row without either of you dying, And because I had a save file from before, it was obviously just default loading in the last test chamber. And knowing how long it took us to get that section down, we were really not looking forward to everything else this achievement required. But we couldn't give up, so put it on test chamber 1 and got going with figuring out the rest. Luckily for us, test chamber 9 is the longest, and other than a section that I'll cover shortly, it has the highest risk of death. So in comparison, the rest of the course 4 was quite simple and straightforward to make our way through and learn. There were, of course, some deaths on the way, as well as new mechanics to learn, such as reversing the direction of movement in the beam, and nervy moments like having to catch each other above insta-kill areas. But overall, test chambers 1 to 7 were not a challenge really. I had, however, read, whilst looking up reasons that we weren't unlocking the achievement, that test chamber 8 was a serious risk of death and just generally nerve-wracking moment. And reaching it, it was easy to see why. So the game briefly turns into a side-scrolling platformer for one player as they try to guide their partner through the spike traps, most of which are just stationary areas that will kill you after a few seconds of contact, but there are these 2 spiked hydraulic press type things which are the real sweaty palms moment. We had a few deaths whilst I got used to the speed at which they activate, but once I realised I was able just to let my partner sit against the edge of them before they retract, it got quite a bit more simple. They would have been a lot trickier if you just instantly died touching any part of them, so I'm obviously glad that wasn't the case. I could tell this was going to be scary enough as it is when some gamer score was on the line. And the final part of the test chamber is quite simple and not very risky. You just bring a cube back to the main platform and then launching all of you over to this last section with it. You place it on the button and we moved on. Last up in course 4 is test chamber 9, which obviously we got a lot of practice with earlier, so we ran through it again faultlessly and decided it was time to attempt the whole run deathless. So starting with chamber 1, we set up to funnel us both to the button on the wall, which raises this walkway below. I then jumped out, getting caught in a pretty clutch manner, may I add here, and then placed a portal below my partner so he could safely land and be carried inside. Simple enough, that one. And next, in chamber 2, he placed portals to carry me into this room and grab the sphere, which I then sent out and fired through portals to interrupt this red laser. With the laser broken, the door opened, so super low risk of death, unless you accidentally fire yourself into the water, I guess. And I'm sure you can see what I meant earlier when I said that most of the test chambers in the course were much quicker than the last. Test chamber 3 is a bit scarier because once we had the cube placed on the button to lower part of the ceiling down, we needed to catch each other above a kill zone. We didn't need to be super fast reaction wise because the timing window is pretty big, so just once one of us was launched out of this angled section, the other placed a portal to catch them in the funnel. I can't really show much of the next test chamber because my partner did all the heavy lifting here really. He basically had to go up into this little area and redirect a laser through portals to a receiver near the exit door. I set up my portals to carry us across, and with that we moved on to test chamber 5. Now this one introduces the flow reversal, so once we had the cube we brought it back over to the start and then adjusted the portals to fire it through the small gap in the glass and hold down that button, bringing up the walkway and ticking off another super easy section. Test chamber 6 requires a bit of brain power to make sure the right person is placing the portals before passing through this force field thing, because that removes all portals that the person placed, so if you are in your own flow you'll just drop to your death below. So after a few minutes of racking our brains, we both reached this end platform and moved into the lifts. Next was 7, and this one took us a moment to remember what to do, but my partner and I worked together to get me onto this red button, which then allowed him to fire himself to the upper section. He then placed portals to carry me up to the same level and move on to the final 2 very scary test chambers. Test chamber 8 was first up obviously with its spike death traps. My job here was just to send my friend in to the maze section and then let him place portals whilst I controlled the direction of his travel and kept him out of the way of those spiked walls and the trap mechanisms. There were a couple of sweaty palm moments where I maybe was too risky with letting him go through, or when I didn't think that he would make it, so reversed the flow, which probably actually just put him in more danger if anything. But he survived both and made it to the end, grabbing the cube. And with the cube in our hands, we fired ourselves across the gap and unlocked the door to the final chamber. Now, we had a lot of practice earlier doing this bit, but we were still nervous because at this point we'd been going for about 30 minutes and really didn't want to lose all that progress right at the end. But we just carefully made our way through, repeating what we had already learned, and these 3 rooms are all the same concept, just knowing the locations to place the barrier to block the turrets really. And I actually saw after completing it that there's a spot you can place to block them all in this last section here, but we never noticed it, so instead used it to knock over the turrets as they spawned. I guess that's the cool thing about this game, having different ways to tackle the puzzles. So I just had to make sure I moved the barrier out of the way as we approached the platform, but we made it. Then moved into the final room and my friend inserted the disc and we saw that sweet achievement pop. This was a nice one to get done first time because we both expected to have to go through some painful fails and restarts. And also I really feel like this achievement should be worth more than a 15 gamer score when compared to some others. But anyway, it was all done now. That left me with just 1 achievement to go, and a nice easy one at that, hugging 3 people on my friends list. Now I had done 2 at this point, my friend I was just playing with and my co-op partner from back in the day. So I logged on to another friend's account on my other Xbox and quickly ran through the calibration course with him, and upon reaching the main test chamber I gave him a nice big hug, which unlocked that final achievement. And you can see what I mean before with this, not sure this achievement should be worth 50 gamer score, but it doesn't really matter because the 1000 out of 1000 was finished. Just the 12 years after starting it, this one. Now I'm certainly glad to have my first completion of the year done on New Year's Day. It was quite a quick one in the grand scheme of things, but one that I've been putting off for ages. Anyway, I have lots more planned, so hopefully there'll be many more, but that's the end of this video, so thanks for watching and see you in the next one.